Welcome to the Heart of the City Regina Downtown podcast series, episode 14. I will be your host, Dominika Denev, Manager of Marketing and Communications for Regina Downtown Business Improvement District. Cushman and Wakefield Global is leading the field in research and guidance for business owners, managers, and tenants. Today I'm joined by Chris Johnson, President and General Manager of Cushman and Wakefield Regina Integrated Property Management, CWRIPM. Joins us today to share some of the best thinking and practices that more than 53,000 professionals have compiled across the globe for building owners, managers, and tenants when it comes to recovery readiness and reopening plans. Welcome and thank you for joining me today, Chris.
Hi, thanks for having me.
How are you doing today?
I'm pretty well, a little bit rainy, but good spirits all in all.
Awesome, love it. Well, why don't we kick things off with a brief overview of what CWRIPM is?
Sure. So Cushman Wakefield Regina Integrated Property Management, or I know it's a big mouthful, so we'll just call it CWRIPM, is a commercial property management firm in Regina. We serve Saskatchewan, so Regina, Saskatoon, and a number of surrounding areas, and offering a wide range of commercial property management services. So everything from maintenance and taking care of the asset to administrative, accounting, and a number of specialty services. So we really specialize in kind of environmental sustainability management and big focus now into recovery readiness since COVID made its way onto the scene.
Now, as most of us have had to adapt our roles within the organizations we work for as a result of COVID-19, have you seen a significant change within your role?
Yeah, I have actually. So a big part of my role is property manager and president, looking after individual assets, and then our staff here is really I've had to shift from standard property management functions and day-to-day communications in the real estate field to really being a bit more of a specialist, specifically on recovery and trying to make predictions and trying to offer guidance and a little bit of insight into where things are heading in terms of recovery and things. That's been a big shift. So a bit more counseling services, a lot more closer interaction with tenants and owners than before. It's not just about submitting regular reporting and their profit sharing checks. It's now a lot more about protecting their asset and being resilient, trying to stop losses, not give up any ground on the landlord side, and really help tenants gain some confidence and some understanding and of how they can financially make it work as well as physically when it comes to opening their stores.
Yeah, and as we head into these reopening phases, and you're talking about having to, help a lot with recovery, the guidance, do some counseling. I know you had mentioned that Cushman and Wakefield developed a couple tools that'll help landlords and tenants, as well as just some different, working through these processes. You kind of experience different things within the organization. Did you want to elaborate a bit on these experiences and some of the tools that you've been working with to help your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Cushman and Wakefield is a global company. They are operating and managing large commercial centers and buildings in all major cities across the world. So they're running buildings in Beijing and other places all over China and a few places in Europe that have started reopening. We're about almost 8 weeks since they've started reopening some of those spaces. So there's been lots of time for them to get experience, learn what's working, what isn't, really develop a good playbook of practices and recommendations. And they put together a few fantastic guides to help anyone. It's open source, anyone can use it. Anyone can use it to reopen either commercial buildings, retail buildings, industrial buildings. So of those on the office workplace side, what they've called is the Recovery Readiness Guide. That was the first one they came out with, and that was really based on their frontline experience opening office properties in Europe and Asia. Within there's what they call the Safe Six. So that's pretty much the top highlights that if you hit these things, you'll be able to reasonably reopen and keep everyone safe. And then within there, they give a lot of information on specifics, types of things you need to be thinking about, how you need from the landlord side to be working with tenants, how from the tenant side what you need to be doing with your staff and also with your landlords. I guess I can touch on kind of a few of those really key points that's in there. And probably the biggest one of all is communication and coordination. landlords are typically working with property managers who are worrying about the day-to-day, keeping things clean and reopening. They're making plans how to safely operate the building once things start picking up and stores are allowed to reopen on the retail side and on the office side when employees and businesses are comfortable to start opening their physical locations again. So they're running around making those plans. Tenants are thinking about how are we going to rearrange the store to keep physical distancing? How are we going to communicate with our customers before they enter, when they're here, those kinds of things. And it's really, really important that as all these different plans are being made, that there's a lot of coordination and communication so landlords and managers understand what tenants are doing and vice versa. So it can be as seamless as possible and to avoid any confusion, any undue stress, because as we reopen, we want to really maintain customer confidence and the confidence of the public or your customers, whether you're in a professional services industry or you're in a retail industry. You really want them to feel confident coming to your place of business because it's going to be weird and uncomfortable for everyone. And as long as all of the major stakeholders can communicate and coordinate, we can make it as smooth and seamless and safe as possible.
Yeah, I have to agree. I was going to say, as you're walking through all of that, you just picture and imagine all these different moving parts, right? And you just think of how important you do have to work together with someone, because if you're not on the same page, it's not going to go anywhere, right? Like it's just going to look like a disaster or cause more issues. So that's a really good point to mention, is working together when you're doing the reopening phase. So,
and I guess probably another important piece to touch on is the financial side of things, right? We've all, managers and landlords and tenants have all at this point made arrangements with one another on how they're going to deal with rent payments and challenges to pay those rents once they do start coming up again. But the big question now is as buildings as businesses are allowed to reopen on the retail side primarily, and offices start to bring some staff back in, how do we make sure that things are handled in a sustainable way in terms of economics, that landlords aren't overly stressing their tenants trying to early recover some of the write-offs or adjustments they've made to rent payments, and that tenants are very upfront and forthcoming with how much they think they can actually afford to contribute towards their rent. So it's going to be, I don't think that, the tap isn't going to go on day one when somebody opens their doors again. I'd really caution against that. I think the big advice that I've been trying to give to people is, from a landlord's perspective, you need to treat each tenant as if they're a brand new startup, no reputation and no customer base, and work with them kind of over the next 6 months here to help them stabilize and get back to a positive cash flow. Rebuild their brand almost in the post-COVID era. Tenant side, it's really the same thing. You need to think about, okay, I'm brand new. I've more or less lost a number of my customers, and how do I reestablish my brand in the market? How do I adhere to all the requirements that I have to from a physical distancing and sanitation standpoint, and still manage to convert sales when customers show up at because I'm not going to be allowed to let everybody in, right? I need to control that flow. So how do I really make sure to convert all those sales? So figuring that out from each side of the coin and working together back to the communication and coordination is really going to help too. So really we're talking about long-term viability as we rebuild. If we jump the gun on the financial side of things, it's really going to cause undue stress, and businesses that may not have had to or may have survived this may not now if we're a little too aggressive on the landlord side.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's the point you mentioned about working together, and then also having to look at it as the business looks at their brand and kind of retelling their story, so to speak, right? Like figuring out what this is going to look like as they reestablish. I recently recorded a podcast with a downtown member who is a business owner, and she said pretty much the same things, Chris. It's neat. She talked about the viability. She talked about creating a 90-day kind of risk protocol and revisiting the understanding of like what her why is, right? And the importance of that, and why you do what you do, and how that's going to roll out in your brand as you kind of reestablish yourself. So it's neat to hear your side of the story as well as an actual member who's looking at that right now, right? And really taking that to heart and seeing what that looks like for her business as she moves forward.
Yeah, that's why. That's as I mentioned. I'm a bit counselor and a bit negotiator that I
Yeah,
haven't had to
absolutely.
be before. Before it's
Yeah.
kind of you administer leases for the most part in my role. But now it's a lot more than that. So it's been an interesting challenge. I've really enjoyed it, and probably for me the most positive thing to come out of this is how much closer I am to the people that I would normally, that I work with
Yeah.
typically. But it's a whole other level of comfort and trust that we've all built up. So we rely on people a lot more.
Well, I think before too, when you think of it, um, probably emotions weren't in the picture, right? Like you would always think like, I can't really talk to somebody that way, right? They don't want to hear that recommendation from me. But now it's like everyone's emotions we wear them on our sleeve pretty much right now, right? You just know what someone's feeling because we're all feeling the same. So I think that awkwardness maybe is out of the picture now, and we're just being human, right? And just being there for what those people need in our lives. So yeah, I can definitely see how that's had to adapt for you. So there's some other good points here too. I know these tools mentioned just with like understanding policies together, which we touched on, working together on how the reopening plan is going to work. And there is parts in here that you guys touch on in the tools about developing a plan to mitigate fears and concerns, and just making sure that your employees understand what's expected of them too. Did you want to elaborate on any of that guidance at all?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So another thing that CWRIPM has been focusing on all this is trying to help out in the community and apply our knowledge outside of just traditional real estate. So we've been working with a few different community groups and talking to them to help them reopen and get ready to kind of reemerge and start returning their service offerings back to the community. And a big part of that is the communication and confidence piece. So along with, so we're working with them really to help develop communication coordination plans more than the nuts and bolts of how they're going to reopen their businesses.
Yeah.
And the same goes for tenants too. It's a lot of it is employee sentiment and how confidently you as the employer are communicating. So mitigating those fears and concerns, one of the big things that the Cushman and Wakefield is recommending in their guides is conducting employee surveys, trying to understand what's been working for them at home, what hasn't, what they miss about the office, what they don't, and then taking a good look at your business model and your real estate utilization, and think about, is there, in the short term, how can we start bringing people back and keep them physically distanced, but in the longer term, where this new normal is heading, I think we'll see a big hybrid of or a big acceleration of work-life balance or working from home kind of stuff. And how do we reuse our existing footprints to make the time when staff are in the office more collaborative, when we're not so worried about being far apart from each other, but being more collaborative and more high functioning when they're as they come and go from the office space. So I think there's a lot of work that commercial office tenants could or should be doing on that side of things. Really just understanding employee sentiment and taking this as an opportunity to change the way they use their real estate, not necessarily how they do their business, but how they use the space that they're renting when maybe they don't have every button every day.
And I know one of the tools too they mentioned is having like a team that's like ongoing support, right? Like that might be something. It's not like this is going away anytime soon, right? And everything we've learned, or people are going to learn through this process, is kind of going to be evolving and ongoing. So having the support of like a team within your organization to possibly help with creating that emergency response for something in the future, or just ongoing support throughout as things evolve, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you'll see a lot of resiliency teams, is what I've called them, starting to pop up when they're looking more about like business interruption has never been more top of mind for business leaders, and and I mean, it's just never happened before. So there, a lot of them, I'm sure, are looking at how do we work differently or respond faster next time, since we've sort of had to figure it out on the fly, what worked for us, what didn't, going through here, and creating that team or task force to look at different aspects too of being resilient in business, economic resiliency and physical resiliency, lots of those kinds of things, service offerings and processes and things. I think the resiliency will be the word of 2020, 2021. And yeah, coming up with those teams that are, made up of a big mix of different people, HR professionals, your business people, your sales people, to come up with strategies to mitigate how this is all going to, play out next time around.
Mm-hmm. And part of the tools, like we touched on the one tool already, the recovery readiness, but there was a second tool that recently came out more related to retail. Mm-hmm. Did you want to kind of briefly overview what that one is more involved with?
Right, and that's probably a bit more interesting or a bit more applicable to the businesses that are really where the uncertainty is and the reopenings are starting to happen. So the Cushman Wakefield's released the retail guide. Within it has the Safe 8. I'm not going to go through all 8 of them, but essentially the big points are, as I mentioned earlier, you need to think about how you're going to let people, or how you're going to navigate people through your store. How are you going to control access in terms of, you can only let 2, you may have a smaller retail store and you may only be able to let 2 or 3 customers in at a time. So how do you deal with the lineup up front? How do you keep those people engaged? So when they're pulling up in the parking lot, that they see the big line, they don't move on, right? You're really trying to convert all those sales. And then thinking about your inventory, so what kind of product are you going to hold? How much of it? Do you have ways to get just-in-time delivery set up instead of sitting on a back room full of product? Because you're going to have to really be selective in what you have on display. You probably have to remove some racking or some tables and things in the stores. So be really conscientious of what, where maybe where your high margin products are, which your quick easy sales are. So on that side of things, you need to think about how you're going to deal with. You really can't let people try stuff on. So how are you going to deal with returns? And still trying to convert those, what product can you have in the store to convert those customers to sales, but not have them spend a whole bunch of time in there and they can't try something on for fit. So you have to think through those ideas. And then coaching and training your staff. So making sure you have proper training in terms of sanitization, because the people working the store are going to be the ones who have to regularly wipe down, customer touch point surfaces. Proper PPE. So as the employer, I think you should be supplying masks to your staff. How that looks is up to you. Follow the right guidelines. And then training and coaching on how to deal with people who are in the store who may not be distancing, or you have one customer that's just creeping up too close to somebody else that's in the store a few times, and some tools on how to manage those interactions. There's going to be heightened, anxiety and awkwardness. It's just, it's weird, right? You walk into a store, you want to see a smiling sales rep, and to show you lots of stuff, trying lots of stuff, and now walk in and everybody's got a mask on, half the stuff is in the store, can't really touch anything or try anything. So it's really, that's how do you navigate all that? That's really where those big 8 run through. So very, very useful for any retailer.
Yeah, but it is like, I'm even noticing when I go out now just to get groceries, right? Like I've gone down the aisle the wrong way sometimes. And you see the lines and you're like, ooh, like you just feel like someone's going to come yell at you from up above, like you're going the wrong way, right? Like you don't know. It is, like you said, there's the weird feeling, right? Like you just don't know what to expect when you walk in places sometimes. So right. I think having that clear understanding and, approaching your customers when they come in and giving them the guidelines right up front so that everyone feels comfortable is going to be really important, because it's awkward, right? It's not the same just being able to run in and out and grab what you need. You have to make sure you're going down the right way and you're not too close, and yeah, different.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And that's a big piece of it is again, back to the giving your staff tools and tips and things, because I know for me, when I'm walking up the aisle and I might be going the right way, I've often gone the wrong, but if I'm going the right way and somebody isn't, you feel that anxiety and kind of like a little bit of that conflict and confrontation.
Yep.
So now imagine you're in charge of running the store and you have people, you have your customers who you're trying to convert to sales, but you have to scold them and you have
Yeah.
to tell them, listen, you're really, it's important that you keep your distances and you may not be comfortable with that. So that's part of converting those sales. You really have to give your staff all the tools and training and everything they could possibly need to convert those sales. Very important, I think.
Absolutely. And now both these guides, where can our listeners find these guides, Chris?
Probably the easiest way would be to link it in the description, but if you go to cushmanwakefield.com, so that's the Cushman's global website, right on top you'll see a banner for recovery readiness, and if you click on that, there's lots of different printed tools, lots of research articles, webinars that have all been recorded, and it's pretty impressive stuff. If you listen to webinars, some of them had 30,000 people on the call. So they truly are global, very impressive with their thought leadership and all the different research departments that they have under the umbrella. They're really pumping out strong research and thinking in terms of how to get real estate and buildings and businesses reopened and back to being, sustainable, or economically sustainable and viable.
Well, and as we continue to evolve and, things are changing as we move day to day, I hear a lot about like the importance of technology and people bring up smart, like how smart is your building? Did you want to kind of touch on that when it comes to Cushman and Wakefield's thoughts or your thoughts about what that looks like for the future?
Sure, yeah. I think, part of the outcomes of these resiliency teams and things, and as as landlords, and this is what I'm really trying to guide my clients towards, is being prepared for a lot of different outcomes. So from a landlord standpoint, I'll probably just focus on that. Your telecom system and your network system inside the building is pretty important. Because I think tenants of the future are going to look to cloud-base a lot of their stuff.
Right.
Because they've had so many employees move out of the office and start working from home, and just hammering their server network if they have an internal server. A lot of tenants do, and you can only transmit as much as the pipe will hold, to put it in layman's terms. So from a building infrastructure standpoint, I think looking at that networking and technology and the infrastructure side is important. And then from a management standpoint, having a smart building, which really means you have an automated building. There's a computer server in there that's connected to all the HVAC systems and fire life safety systems, camera systems, and all sorts of lighting and all sorts of things. That the maintenance and operations and management people can access remotely and control the building. So those buildings that have had those systems in place have been able to respond quickly as mass exodus happens out of them, and still maintain the buildings from an operational standpoint, that they're running and safe, without having to have full complement of staff, for safety and all sorts of other reasons. So buildings that don't have that have had some real challenges having to operate, I think, through this big shutdown, and they'll be a lot slower to adapt as people start coming back, because you're going to have to almost recommission the entire building, which is difficult and costly when you don't have a smart building per se.
Absolutely. And if the listeners had questions regarding this, Chris, could they reach out to you, or would they reach out to Cushman and Wakefield just to get some, maybe like where to even go, like what direction if they did have to revamp their business or building?
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk to anyone. It's probably easiest to start with me, and then any resources I can pull and help deliver those ones. So yeah, you can just reach me. Probably email might just be best. So chris.johnson@CWRIPM.com.
Great. And now I just have to ask, Chris, with all of this going on, what do you see is going to be the new normal?
There's probably a few different new normals, and it's going to take a long time to get there, I think. We'll probably see, I touched on it a little earlier, but a big acceleration in work from home or remote work, and it's going to have a lot of impact in utilization of real estate from the commercial office side of things. I don't see tenants, or I don't see like footprint shrinking, but I see expansion plans definitely being reconsidered, but more like reutilization. So how can offices rebuild themselves physically to keep everybody distanced more, a bit more than before when the next pandemic comes up, so we can maybe have more people in the office if we need to. But how do we make that utilization more collaborative and attractive to people? So when they are in the office, they're there to see people and interact with their team members. And how do you rebuild or redefine those areas of your office space to accommodate that? They're going to be at home getting, crushing out those reports. They're going to be in the office collaborating. So that's where I think you'll see that. And on the retail side, I hate to say it, but an acceleration of online, even more so online shopping and things. And we'll probably see a conversion to even local businesses that most of their product offering from retail standpoint will be on the internet, and in their store will be the the highlight pieces, the try-ons before we have it delivered to you the next day. So and that'll naturally mean smaller, fewer stores. So I think we'll see a lot less bricks and mortar, unfortunately, and more experiential shopping. So those who can convert to that experiential shopping when you come into the bricks and mortar store, will have a lot more success because people are going to be looking for those. So I think there's just going to be fewer options in general as we start seeing more closures over the next 6 to 12 months.
Absolutely. Now, as we come to an end, is there anything you'd like to add as any final thoughts or advice for anyone out there today?
Sure. Like, I think from some advice, as the economy in Saskatchewan starts to reopen and businesses are returning to operation, I won't say normal. I think just take it slow and be open and honest from a business point. Be very open and honest and upfront with your landlord on how you're doing, how what your cash reserves might be like when the doors do finally open, and come up with a plan together to do it successfully, so you don't burden landlords, don't burden tenants, and tenants start contributing back to the base rents or back to the revenue of the property and paying rents again. From the public standpoint, as we start going back into these office buildings and back into the malls and retail stores, is be patient. You're not going to be able to run in and out to do a quick return anymore. So really be conscious of what you're buying and serious, I guess, when you're out shopping too. So you can help the businesses convert those sales, and only people who are really there to spend some money are there taking up space in the store and in line and things. We'll see how it goes. Take it slow. If we rush it, we'll end up having to go backwards, and nobody wants that. So I think everyone's done a really, really great job being secluded and keeping their distances. And I know everyone's anxious to start getting back to normal, but it's going to be a long swing into that new normal. So take your time and be patient and be nice.
I agree. Thanks, Chris. I truly appreciate you coming on and sharing all the wonderful advice and strategies that Cushman and Wakefield Global and yourselves have been working on, and just to help everyone within your community. It's truly appreciated what you've been doing. So I thank you again. And I hope everything goes well. And we just look forward to having you come on the podcast again sometime to share more of your information.
Sure, I appreciate it, Dominica, and I really like really appreciate all the work that the Regina Downtown Bid does. Really is a very powerful tool, and I think with your leadership and through Judith and others, we really do have one of the best downtown bids in the country. So great job.
Oh, that's awesome. Sending virtual hugs. Thank you so much, Chris. Have a great day.
Thanks. Take care.